got them four. You get close to her, buddy, she'll take you, so
Oh, look who's coming.
she'll follow you in a heartbeat. Good morning, lady.
Morning, lady. Morning. How's everybody doing?
Good, good.
We're gonna play fine. We're gonna play fine.
You doing all right this morning, baby?
I'm doing all right.
Good,
We're all
good,
hurt.
good.
Don't feel bad. I'm dragging the line too.
Give these to Melissa.
Yes,
There's a
ma'am.
pair of pants that she might give you, so okay.
Come on, what you need.
Okay, that's
I love
fine.
you.
But too. But tell you, you know, right?
Charles, you doing all right? I'm doing good. Ain't complaining about nothing. Good. They don't shake my head, I may have full funky disease.
Did
Well,
you check out that medicine yet?
what's that KZ still in there?
I got
Oh,
some.
you, what you just done,
Yeah,
you shake hands.
Oh, no, I get it, I get it.
Chance.
I don't think.
I understand, but a lot of people don't.
Well, I know one thing that diet that Dr. Murphy put me on, it's called a FODMAP diet, that it sure has decreased the amount of belly pain that I've had with this stuff. And, you know, so.
Well, mine is mainly the infection.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I just.
I
have
did
to
take a shower
learn
this
to live
morning,
with it, you know.
so she cut down on some of the disease.
Oh, my God, I had something all my life ever since.
Yeah,
I had that tonsillitis crap and it done messed me up. From now on. And then it
well,
goes
Charlie,
to-
what you know good besides me and you?
ever since Charlie. Yeah.
And tonsillitis all the time.
Did you have them taken out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did
Not
too.
bad.
From there, it just got worse. Oh, my God.
Yeah, some 13, some 15, one of them was hospital, the other one broke off. Can't figure out which one it is.
Yeah, I was 3 when I had mine out, and they should have took them out from day 1. Scarred my ears, messed me all up.
Just not all 5 of us get that tonsillitis.
Tell Marissa if you don't feel, just pass them on to somebody else,
Yes,
okay?
ma'am, love you.
W2.
If there's got to be a cure in this world or something. There are 1,000 things to do. Can't do nothing. I just will read it this morning. You want some more coffee?
I got swallowed there, I think that was funny. Well,
How are things in the other world?
oh, well, just working home, that's all I've been doing lately.
Oh,
You know, up till now, there's nothing where to go and nothing to do.
I didn't know.
Are you starting early for us?
On
Yeah.
time?
Usually by the time I get up here and
Sit down, Joe.
start talking, Joe will
Yeah,
show up, so I don't know why I waste my time.
I'm sorry, man.
I don't know anybody
Just got there.
on anything that he don't. In fact, he knows a whole lot more than I do. Well, that's where you sit.
I won't never catch up.
But one thing I do know, through the years being around Joe, and other preachers, a good education sure helps on preaching.
it does.
I'll try to teach a lesson from up there. About the only thing I can do is just kind of brush along on the surface.
Well, that's all.
There's plenty of blessings on the surface. There's nothing, bad that you can say about that.
No.
But digging into the history and geography and all of the other things of the scriptures and the Bible. A lot of us read the Bible several times, through it, read it. And really, we don't dig deep that way, we just read it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I do it, I put it that way. And, that's about the time I sat down there, you all saying.
I know, I could hear you, I could hear you saying that.
That's how you.
I don't feel bad, the girl workers, they told me I was talking about behind your back, and I looked at her, I said, well, I'm face to your face, so it doesn't go behind your back.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we know that we're being listened to when we're in here. Also, 2 or 3 other people.
Well, it's girl, yeah, like,
I never been. Never.
really, education is relative. I will tell you, a movie I watched one time, it's about,
Every day, they're running across there.
this kid come up there, where he's, fancy boots, and this, the old work coat that was on his left, like, big boots. Yes, sir, he said, I thought these, were about what I paid for the dollars, we got this available. Look at the tree, so. Quick, take this knife, and kind of, oh. The boy said, why'd you do that, sir?
Oh, Rose is already here.
Oh, boy. Education, just, University of Texas.
Good morning. I can't hear you and I don't have you muted. I'm not sure why. Hey, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Love you. Hi.
I don't get it.
Is that Rose?
Yeah.
Hi,
He's
Rose.
got a wing to it. Yeah.
We're all still virus free to our knowledge.
Yeah, we're not in the building yet.
Have y'all started having services yet?
Some people give me
No.
like.
No.
This is their house. We're not sure.
Well, that's 50. You don't have it.
Okay.
Dawn, you any better?
A little bit. She should be here for church.
You know what I heard about being a therapist? I've been telling you enough, I don't know about keeping my mouth shut.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out which camera stuff you're coming through.
Just smile and nod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad.
Hey.
You're there back there.
I know you're missing half the people that are here, but there isn't that many. Okay, can you hear okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. How was your trip?
You mean to the countryside?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's about an hour and 20 minutes away. It was fine. We pulled a lot of weeds. The weeds was, almost, I'd say almost 3 foot tall.
Oh,
So
wow.
a lot of weeding to be done around things to be good at Rosemary's place, so. But it was nice to get away from here. You know, not having to wear a mask every time you're outdoors. That was really great.
Common sense.
I have yet to wear a mask but one time. So
You have to wear it every time we go out.
I'm not proud of it, but I don't like them. I can't breathe.
I'm not saying we like them, but we need to do it. Not only protect us, but protect others.
Yeah, we just don't, well, it really hasn't come to Bryan County that much, at least this end of it.
Even when we're able to meet in the building again, we all have to have masks,
Oh,
even
wow.
if we're a small group.
Wow.
But, okay, they're thinking about maybe having 2 different meetings, for the morning. And then Sunday night, we don't have that many, so Sunday night should be okay, but. Oh, you have an idea when we're gonna start?
Oh, she's starting to roll
We
it.
might start in about 2 weeks to meet in the building
And I
again.
swear to you, I'm not making it.
Well, we're kind of,
And we're not allowed to have children under 11.
they are kind of doing the same thing about school, trying to figure out how to do school.
And we have to have town for everyone that comes in and everyone has to have a mask.
Wow.
We have to mark the floor, keep the distance and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's begin. Joe and Kim are not going to be here today. I talked to her yesterday. They were actually in Missouri, right by Raytown. They've gone through Independence in Kansas City. which if you've never been to Kansas City, that is the place to go for barbecue. They have some of the best barbecue I've ever had in my life.
I thought Carolina was the best barbecue.
North Carolina's, well, they think they do until they go to
Well,
Kansas
you know,
City, then Kansas
that's
City,
in
they
the
realize that they shouldn't have ever
Yeah,
barbecued anything
Jimmy's
in the first place.
brother-in-law had claimed the thing that he had a Brunswick stew recipe,
Mhm.
and we went over there one time, and he loaded us up on Brunswick stew, we got Brunswick stew. And we
Yeah.
brought it home, and we got it out fixed, we couldn't eat it, it tasted so bad, and I said, well, I don't understand me, what did you do to this to make it taste so bad? But it was awful.
There are 4 schools of barbecue. 4 different kinds of barbecue. One is the Carolina barbecue, which is,
Most people, right?
no, it's pulled pork with apple cider vinegar,
Okay, yeah, what's the
basically. Kansas City is the mustard.
Okay, yeah, there's a
Base
mustard
sauce.
base, vinegar base.
Memphis is no sauce, dry rub, barbecue and smoke. And Texas is mainly brisket, but all beef. Barbecue. What you can do with beef. So, and it's the Texas barbecue that you're usually gonna find that they take days or hours and overnight and smoke and stuff. My favorite by far is Kansas City barbecue with that mustardy sauce. Because they take and mainly because they take everybody else's except Memphis and make it theirs, and just add the sauce to it. And I love that sauce. But they were going through there. Don't know of anything else happened except that Eddie Haskell died. If you remember Leave It to Beaver,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Eddie Haskell passed away this past week. Charles, this word of prayer, please.
Sure. Let's pray, please. Excuse me. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for this beautiful morning. We thank you, Lord, for the privilege we have to be in your house with Christian friends. Lord, we ask you to be with the storm victims tonight. North Carolina, Lord, be with them. Family. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to be with our leaders of our country, make a right decision. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to be with the nurses and doctors, lawyers, all our men in uniform, law, police and firemen. Lord, we ask you to be with the homeless and hungry. We ask you to be with our friends. May they be even better where they can be with us later. Again, Lord, we thank you for a beautiful day. Thank you for our health and our home. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, now, in Revelation, where we're at right now in the judgment, traditionally has been ascribed to, and the judgment part, I will agree. But since this is written about heaven, which in heaven there is no time. There's no, it's awfully hard though for us to understand it because we are used to before, after, during, while, all this kind of stuff. And time is so important to everything that we do. And Revelation is written with that in mind. It's written with people who deal with time in mind. However, what we need to realize is even though it's written that way, it is not a consideration in heaven. Now, in Revelation 20 is this big battle that I can't get to for some reason. Now, is this huge big battle in 7 through 10. When 1,000 years were completed, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out and deceive the nations between the 4 corners of the earth. Gog and Magog, deliver them together for war. You gather them together for war. The number of them is like the sand of the seashore. And they came upon the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints, the beloved city, and fire came down from heaven and devoured them. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are also, and they will be tormented day and night forever. Generally, what is said about this is the battle that's been mentioned chapters before of Armageddon. Armageddon is not mentioned here because another Bible story is mentioned here. Gog is a king of Magog, and he attacks with his army Israel in the Old Testament. And by the time he gets there, God creates a bunch of natural disasters that defeats him. So now here you have, now is this a battle? I dare anybody to look in there and see a battle. There's one thing to have armies. It's another thing to have them actually fight in a battle. We understand this. Not too long ago when Iran was, well, we call it in political science, saber rattling. They were saying they're going to develop their nuclear bombs and aim them and this, that, and the other. And they were going to break the treaty because our president would not keep up his part of the treaty. And so what did we do in response to that? We sent several aircraft carriers and things into the Persian Gulf and surrounded Iran. We sent all kinds of stuff over there. But we had armies there, and I'm saying army very loosely because it was actually Navy, but we had army, we had Marines, we got ready to invade Iran. No invasion ever took place. Nothing ever happened. What that was saber rattling. In other words, in the old days, you had a saber, which is a sword, and you rattled it together to say that you had them and you were fixing to come after you. Well, this is what happens. Well, now, in this place, is there a battle? No. This is the big battle for Jerusalem that all of the Revelation prophets are saying today. There is no battle. There's no battle that takes place here. Before the armies came together, and before I can't see any fight. They came up on the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city, and fire came down from heaven and devoured them. Exactly, kind of, well, not the fire, but the natural disasters that happened to Gog and Magog in the Old Testament. And the devil who deceived them was thrown in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are also, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. A bloodless battle, really, when you come to it, there was no battle. God ended it for people. Okay, now, here's the parallel. There's three parallels. Today's time, the time of Revelation, and the time in the Old Testament of Gog and Magog. Here we are, surrounded by the enemy. Happened all three places. Here we are, surrounded by a seemingly unstoppable, victorious enemy. All three places. The Old Testament, the time of John, and even present day. The forces of evil are very, very strong and physically stronger than the forces of good. That happens in all three places. However, what factor had they not considered? God. God. Now, we're going to talk about him a little bit tonight, but the biggest example I know of this is David, when he was a young man, fighting the giant Goliath with no weapons. People say, well, he had a sling against a sword and a spear and armor. That's no weapon at all. I mean, that's, in fact, it's such a joke. Goliath said it was. You know, you come, who am I that you come after me with this little kid with a sling, you know? I'm Goliath. The guy was over 9 feet tall. I mean, he was huge. Had a spear, had a sword. He also had the army of the Philistines behind him, who were much more numerable than the Israelites. So, who's going to win? The Philistines are, until you take into account God. Who's going to win this vast army of Gog and Magog in the Old Testament? Who's going to win with the Romans against the Christians in the time of John? Who's going to win with the forces of evil in this world and the forces of good? There's so few of us. Look around the room. You know, God's going to win. God's going to win. In fact, he's going to win so much that, and this is exactly what's going to happen, and in a way what has happened in verse 10, and the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are also, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, got a text from YouTube. Sorry. Sorry about that. All right. Now, it's going to end. The devil who deceived them was thrown in the lake of fire and brimstone. I've talked so much about that, I'm not going to anymore. Where the beast and the false prophet are also, and they will be tormented day and night forever. Now, what's going to happen to those who are on the other side of the battle, on the good side, the saints? Then I saw a great white throne, and him who sat upon it, from whose presence earth and heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one of them according to their deeds. Then death and Hades were thrown in the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown in the lake of fire. All right, in the end, you're going through all of this. The biggest thing that Christians in John's day would get would be, you're going to win. You're going to win. All right, now, it didn't look like it in David's day. It didn't look like it in the day of Gog and Magog. It didn't look like it in John's day, and it don't look like it today. But the plain and simple fact is, you're going to win, and all your enemies will be destroyed, which I won't spend a lot of time on, because that's what tonight's sermon's on, from Psalms 40. You're going to win, even though it looks like you're not. Because in the end, which is what really, 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 really matters, you're going to go to heaven, and they're going to find their part in the lake of fire. Now, we talked about the books. It's like an accounting book. It's like a books of a business. You know, the story that's written down of that business is its books. And it automatically writes those who are found faithful into the book of life. So if your name is not found in the book of life, you're going to be thrown in the lake of fire. Now, 21, here's the good news, okay? Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them. And they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death. There will no longer be any mourning, crying, or pain. The first things have passed away. All right. This is the judgment zone. The new city, our new heaven and new earth, the first heaven, first earth passed away. Talking about the physical heavens here and the physical earth. And I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the place where God dwelt among men physically in the Old Testament. Here's the New Jerusalem. Now, emphasize John's use by God's inspiration of the word new. Mike Pence's opinion notwithstanding, Jerusalem today was a holy city to God. It no longer is. I mean, we ticked off all kinds of people about a year or two ago, moving our embassy from Tel Aviv, which is the capital, to Jerusalem. Because there are a lot of people today who believe that Jerusalem, the actual city of Jerusalem in Israel, which is not owned by Israel completely, Jerusalem is going to be the city where Christ reigns. Nowhere here does it say that. It talks about a new Jerusalem. All right, now.
I say God will make a new.
Yeah, it is the new city where God will speak to man. And by the way, Jerusalem was not the first Jerusalem, okay? And the tabernacle was where people went to worship. It was in Shiloh, many miles away. Abraham had no idea of Jerusalem. I mean, neither did neither the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They didn't know, nor the 12 tribes. They didn't really know of a Jerusalem. It was built on a foundation. David went there. It was built on a foundation. Finally, that's where the temple was supposed to be, and that's where Solomon built it. But this was many thousands of years later. So the point I'm making is this. Jerusalem was the city of God. Wasn't the only one. This new Jerusalem is the city of God. Now, the way he describes it is very, very beautiful. Made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, the use of the word bride means this is the wedding day, the time when the two are united together forever. Now, I couldn't tell you, in my position as a public school teacher and as a preacher, I could not tell you how many weddings I have officiated at. It's almost, I have never gone to a wedding without the paper in hand, but I've gone to a whole bunch of them where the only thing I read off the paper was the bride and groom's name. I know it by heart. I've done so many times. Something I have never, ever seen is an ugly bride.
Never seen a what?
Ugly bride. When they come down that aisle, now, folks, you know, places like in Donna, in my case, where we got married, you know, just real quick, right off the she wasn't ugly that day. She was way prettier than me. But there are other weddings like that where people just show up, you know. But when they spend thousands and thousands of dollars, you better believe when that bride makes her entrance into that wedding, everything is going to be done to make sure she is. In fact, I think that's kind of the point of it, is that she is the most beautiful woman in the place, right? She is the most beautiful woman in the place. And there have been thousands of dollars spent for that, I can promise. And hours put into that. Now, the same was true in Roman weddings, Greek weddings, Jewish weddings. Whatever could be afforded, whatever could be done, when that bride came in, she was the absolute most beautiful woman in the place. And so, a bride made ready for her husband, the man she's in love with, that she's chosen to spend the rest of her life with. John has been binge watching here lately, The Real Housewives of all kinds of places. When they have a wedding, oh my goodness. You know, it takes days to get that girl ready for her wedding.
Well, in some cultures, the day, if it's a female child, the day she's born, the parents start saving for her wedding day. And whatever it is they've saved up over the years, they spend on that
I
wedding.
saw that recently. Where was it?
There's some-
What culture? No, there was a culture,
Indian.
India. Yeah, and it's huge, and dowries, and this and that, and tradition. Even here in America, we have entire multi-billion-dollar industries centered around weddings, floral industries, wedding planners
Yeah.
that make, in fact, people say that's not that big of a deal. Folks, I know of about 3 within a mile of here.
Wedding planners.
Wedding planners, venues for weddings and receptions, places to go, where to have it, this, that, and the other. I have been to some very beautiful ones, venues where you have it. There's one in Pembroke, actually. I never realized it, but you go back a ways behind 119. It's a beautiful place. I used to know what it's called. We were going to have prom there, and then everybody said no. Something Farm, it's called. It's beautiful. Did a wedding there. In fact, Jennifer's wedding, I think, was there. There's in Brooklyn, there's 3 or 4 that I've been to. The dresses, I mean, I doubt very seriously where you could get out of paying over $1,000 for a wedding dress.
$300 is expensive.
They cost a pile of money. I mean, in every culture that I know of, you will make a wedding, a bridal thing as big as it can be. Now, and if you'll notice, I've seen this a few times when families got married. If you'll notice, there is an expense for everything, but it's usually divided up into what the groom pays and what the bride's family pays and what the groom's family pays. The groom's family comes out a lot cheaper in all of those things, a lot cheaper. In our culture, the groom's family pays for the rehearsal dinner, the boys' tuxedos, which, by the way, they sound expensive, but when you compare them to bridal dresses and bridesmaids' dresses, those are cheap. I have never seen a wedding gown. I'm sure you can find them, but a wedding gown, a brand new one, for less than $1,000. They're usually way more than that too. And you're going to use them once. You're going to use it one time, and then just to make sure of this, there are companies in this country, and this is all they do, is they preserve the wedding dress in a box that you'll never see. And that company's probably out of business by the time your daughter gets old enough to use that wedding dress. And if it comes out, it's full of moth holes and, or it's rotted or whatever, it's supposed to preserve it forever, And then when she opens it to wear to her wedding, it's supposed to be brand new, but if it's true, that company's been out of business for years, probably. And it costs a pile of money to do it. The reason I'm saying that is this is the illustration. Every culture, I can't think of a better one. New Jerusalem comes out of the clouds as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them. And they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eye, and there will be no longer any death. There will no longer be any mourning or crying or pain. The first things have passed away. Now, this part, the tabernacle of God is among men. The tabernacle in any religion is where the God is. It's where the God lives. That's his house. Okay, Judaism. What was the place inside the temple? What was it called? Holy of Holies. Only one man could enter the Holy of Holies, and he could only enter it one day per year. On what we know of as Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. I kind of submit that he didn't enter just one time. He entered several times on that day because there was a lot of stuff he had to carry to go in there. You know, but he could only go there one time per year. Well, I can only say on one day per year he could go in. That was where he actually met with God. That's where God dwelt. This is why when Jesus died, there was no longer any purpose for that anymore, because it doesn't work that way. When Jesus died, the veil of the temple was, separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple was torn. Now, but it's going to come back. The tabernacle of God will dwell among men, and he will dwell among them. And they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. It says two things. Number one, there's no longer any reason for tears. But the most important thing it says is something else. What does this imply by the fact that God will wipe away tears from their eyes? Have you ever done that? Have you ever taken a tissue and somebody was crying and handed it to them, or take a tissue and wipe their tears when they're okay? All right, think about it for just a minute. Let's wait a moment. Think about it for just a minute. What does that imply?
Why do you care?
Not what I was looking for, but yes, and that's very important. But what does it imply?
It's some of your memories probably going to come because I would have a hard time if I had a complete memory, if I didn't find other loved ones that I knew that had strayed and weren't there. That'd be very sorrowful for me.
That wasn't what I was looking for, but yes, that's true too. But think about it for just a moment. If God shall wipe away every tear from every eye, what does that imply about how people in heaven live?
There'll be no sadness there.
Okay? But we're not getting to where I want you to go. Sorry. No death, no sadness, no crying.
Don't have to have any walkers and no wheelchairs.
Okay.
Nothing like that.
Give you
Oh,
hand.
get away from being sad.
If I was to take a tissue, if you were crying and I was to take a tissue, how close would I have to be to you to give it to you? God and man live physically together. When was the last time that happened in the Bible? And actually at all? When did God and man regularly, physically spend time together? Garden of Eden. That's when man and God would walk together in the cool of the day. What does that mean? Completely, I have no idea. However, whatever it meant, I want to be a part of it. Okay? Man and God would physically spend time together, which is what is implied here. A friend of mine used to bring this up all the time. I brought it up a time or two here. None is more necessary than right here. We divide the Bible into Old and New Testaments. A friend of mine, at least an internet friend of mine, I have a lot of respect for. I think he's wrong about this, but I'm not going to quibble with it because even if he's right or wrong, it makes no difference. But he believes that the Old Testament should include Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because Jesus, those are the chronicles of Jesus, and they were under the Old Covenant. And the only thing I think he's wrong about is he's making it a bigger deal than it needs to be, as long as you understand that Jesus lived under the Old Covenant. But he's a very learned man. I don't want to cast aspersions on it at all, but I'm not going to mention his name because I said something negative about him. But I have a lot of respect for him. When I have a question, he's one of the 3 men that I email and ask what he thinks about it. And the reason I've said that is that he divides the Bible, the Old Testament, the end of John. The New Testament really begins in Acts chapter 2, is what he says. J.D. Bales didn't say that, but Dr. Bales always said that Acts chapter 2 was the hub of the entire Bible. That's around the Bible, always, the rest of it kind of, the meanings of it all spin around, are related to Acts chapter 2. A friend of mine, we always teach this. He said you can divide the Bible many ways. He said one way you can divide it is to draw a line right through Genesis chapter 3. Because before then, man and God walked together in the cool of the day. Then man fell. The rest of the Bible was making a nation, keep that nation perfect so they could see the coming of Jesus Christ, who would bring in a new age, which would get man where? Back to Genesis chapter 3, where man and God would walk together in the cool of the day. I think it's a pretty good way to look at the Bible. Yeah.
You said that, won't you? Do you believe man and God walks together today?
In a spiritual
Yeah.
sense, yes. In a spiritual way, yes. But what I'm talking about, Charles, if I were to come to your house and you and I were to have a mutually beneficial conversation and walk through your property out there,
Yeah.
that's exactly the way it was with God and man in the Garden of Eden, exactly the way it will be with God. It's the kind of what we're doing right now. Or if you could use several illustrations. Someone that you like and they come to town. The last time Roland and Rose came to town, they showed up unannounced right before church Wednesday night. Right before evening services Wednesday night. And we sat for about an hour in our little living room, all of us, Rose and Roland, sister, Dad and Don and I, and talked for about an hour. That kind of intimate, physical relationship is not what happens between God and man today. But it is what did happen in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, and what will happen after the judgment is man and God will live together. I don't want to trivialize it too much, but man and God will be neighbors.
I have every now and then that I can put it myself together and walk from the house out the lane and back and mumble. But when I get back, it
That is a spirit.
just relax.
And I'm not trying to discount that. That is a spiritual relationship and a spiritual contact that you have with God. And I don't want to trivialize that or demean that. However, what this is treating God treating Christ as an old friend that you physically spend time with. I mean, aren't there people, they may be family, they may be friends, whatever. Aren't there people that you would go out of your way and change your plans to spend time with those people here on earth? this is the way that it will be with God. So, Charles, you're going to have what you're just talking about. You're going to have that with God, but add to that the fact that God's going to be right beside you when you say it, when you have it, which is eminently more valuable. All right, we're going to have to quit here, so I run out of time. I must have gone on the soapbox or something, but we'll start here Wednesday night.
Good night, Shane.
Oh, Rose, there's a whole lot more people than it looks like on your camera. I just say, the second head, Sandy's it, but there's more. Okay. I'm not going to share a screen with you. I'm going to make it so you can see the front because that's been causing all kinds of trouble. I'm not entirely sure why.
Morning. Morning. Morning, lady. Coming up behind you.
Okay. Sneaking up. I don't have any money.
Napkins and things in there. The
Oh,
napkins box is empty there. I was gonna get another.
I don't know, but just take that one.
Okay.
I don't know if we have any more on.
I'll check.
Or just do the Elabel thing, just get a roll of toilet paper.
This was empty, Rita.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
I don't know why everything takes so long. Anybody got plans for tomorrow?
Yeah, I got plans. Go to my mom's house, probably chicken.
Well, our plans are not that set in stone because I got the charcoal and the lighter, but I don't know what meat I can find to grill. I even found some hickory chips to use, but I'm not entirely sure what meat
Yeah, we have chicken. fingers.
we will use.
I'm behind you.
Everybody has traditions, I guess.
Probably have chicken.
I just thank God for the military.
No, that's wrong.
Joe wants the, verdict on Don.
She'll be here. She should be here. Oh. All right, Rose, that's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Got a lot. Yeah. We go. You look at script. You know what they call it, English Chambers Road. English Chambers. That's really.
I don't like him, so
Citrus grove. That's when they got the nickname.
By the way, if y'all want to talk to Rose, she's out, she's watching.
And Rose,
But she's watching, she's actually watching what I'm doing, but she can hear you.
I'm gonna put this across the road.
you know, I was gone, I was here, and got sick. I was stayed on.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
They, you talk about like
About 6 months.
I can-
sound coming in and out.
I can't,
Spiritual contact with God. I think so.
I can barely hear any of that, breaking up for some reason. I'm sure,
I know you were breaking up too.
I'm sure it's us here. I'm trying to do too much with one computer, and it's reloading, and hopefully it'll work.
It'll probably, it'll work. Who wants to be dog catching? Don't care. Don't have a dog.
I enjoyed being here with you all.
We enjoy having you. Today it looks like you're it. In fact, YouTube is not working for some reason today. Maybe too many people in the States are trying to get it. And I'm trying to bring the sermon
You have
up,
good,
not succeeding for some reason.
I have a theory.
You can
is
see
your
that.
weather good there now?
Is who?
One more.
Is your weather good there?
It's hot. It's like normal.
Well, we have some wind, but today we have a warm, real cold. Down 7 centigrade last night though.
All this.
It is very, very hot here right now.
We're too close, so we get away. You know, you go. And I can see.
Next year, it's 6. My mom thought I was 6-0 yet. 6-0 yet.
Trying to turn things off, but that'll, well,
I wrote it in 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
all right.
Sorry, I was trying to do a little part, the little one. We got some. He really put my whole. You put all. Sure. I don't want to get.
While that's doing that, I'm gonna go check on Don. I'll be right back. Are all the buttons in? All the buttons in?
Try it.
Thank you.
Where's the other?
I was thinking that for a couple of years.
Huh?
At least
She's got here.
no, it needs. Especially, I'm putting my hand.
You do, buddy.
I do it, so good.
Good, good. I was wondering over there, we got.
Just don't get one way to stop.
Yeah. He's. I don't know what he's doing. He got nothing. Not that mean.
He is, he's seen that rat fast, and he went out there.
Yeah, 8 in that. the 7 and far side, and he's got these other two.
Well, he's got 20 acres over there.
Oh, hey? That's good.
What's that guy's name? Baker. Over there by, Ed Baker. Yeah. He's got 20 acres over there. He's just, the reason he put him over there is, he, I think,
Big, probably.
no, he pays like 75,000 for that. He's already been offered 210. He may not put nothing over his own stuff. Because he can make 130,000 off of his paper. So he can make that kind of money off that property. And I know, there's no stuff grants wise. So there's ever done. Yes.
He gets over J. Russ. I forget about.
He's got a lot of places, real funny over there, where they just keep water. They ain't no lake, it's a beach, and they're just water. This man was selling, the man didn't know he was selling actual water. Yeah. I think it was 200-foot frontage on both sides, both pieces. And he sold them to Paul for 100 pieces.
I see it.
And it's big enough, one of them big enough for my wall. Yeah, I ain't like that. I don't think I'm people like that.
I'm looking them up, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, 723. I think it's still money. Comes and goes. Nothing is perfect in this world. Just me.
Hey,
Good morning, love. Good morning. How's your mama? Huh? How's your mama?
Hey, girl.
No, she didn't. She's okay. I thought Randall was there. Girl, she was. No, she came, I think you had to double with.
No.
I think it's
It's
about that. Here, Wednesday. Well, maybe I put it back. Yeah. I don't know, she was saying something.
Maybe just mine in King's class, teach a whole lot of it.
I'll pay for mine all day long.
Hey, I got my here, myself.
So you people get flooded out most of the time?
You know what, anything goes.
221 up Hickory.
It does,
You pay Hickory.
it does though, it's always
They
been
said
that
it
way.
went over the bridge there.
I can't do nothing.
That's right. That's the thing.
Top of my head, put it in
Yeah,
the.
okay, now.
So, Jay.
But it's, going over the bridge, it's out. Leave the ride a little bit in there. That boats was up on,
Hey.
up down the river. Yeah.
Robin, how you doing?
Thank you.
I'm gonna say thank you, she loved it, thank you. Oh, she loved it. And I said, oh, it's not home, and I had to tell her.
First song. First thing.
Yeah, okay.
Well, so you graduate.
Singing that song first thing this time.
You will get that. You will get that. That's me.
I could always, that ain't my house.
I don't know, I don't know.
Everything, yeah, I have five. You do?
Work them off.
My gosh.
Oh, I don't eat a whole lot of nothing. Oh, no, yeah. We're not gonna do that.
Yeah, she's kind of, you know, so worried. Just felt kind of bad today. I can't really go over there. Well, my sister,
I know the feeling.
yeah. But she's doing okay, yeah. Whenever I talked to her last time, she didn't. But she did that. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what,
I wanted to call, but she doesn't answer her real phone. Her real phone, sure.
Yeah, she went down. Yeah, she is. Yeah, you got a job on you.
I don't got it. I don't got it.
Good morning.
Yeah. And she answers it all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely call it.
How did they get our services?
It's hard to.
I'm waiting all day long.
We'll get started. Brother Charles will give me some prayer, please.
I call sometimes.
Brother Charles, give me some prayer, please. Sure.
Let's pray, please. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for this beautiful morning. We thank you, Lord, for many blessings you store upon us daily. Lord, we ask to be that family, the north, in the storm, be with them and keep them safe. We ask you, Heavenly Father, be with the sick right now. Be with them and heal them, so they can be back with us later. We ask you, Heavenly Father, forgive us where we've wronged anybody. We ask you, Lord, to be with the homeless and the hunger over there. Be with our military, law enforcement environments. Be picking on our policemen anymore, Lord. We ask you to be with us now as we go to Bible study and be with us and may we do things right in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Let's see, what they have, check that out, what's paid for.
Yes, sir.
Brother Wade, would you, give a front? If you would, turn to number 723. I thought we'd sing that one, oh, we all got good wind. Oh, right now, when I lost wonder, a sinner lost, the world I see the stars, I hear the lonely thunder. I come to the universe is great. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And through the woods and forests praise thy wonder, and hear the birds sing sweetly in the tree. Then I look down from lofty mountain range, and hear the brook, and feel the gentle breeze. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great when Christ shall come, with shout of heavenly strong, and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior For our prayer, let's sing number 102. 102. I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear calling on my ear, the Son of God is and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share free none other has ever known. I stay in the garden with him, though the night around me is falling. But it is to come to the voice of one, his voice will be his calling. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share with everywhere. None other has ever known. We've already had the prayer, so go ahead and then sing it before the for the Lord's Supper. Pardon me, I'll try to get it going here in a minute. Before the Lord's Supper, let's sing number 142. 142. Yeah, please excuse me for mumbling around and standing around this morning. Good evening, now. Must Jesus bear the cross alone, and all the world free? Let the cross for everyone, and there's the cross for me. The consecrated cross I'll bear till he shall set me free. And
a crown for me. Oh, precious cross of glorious crown, oh, resurrection day. We angels from the stars came down, and bore my soul away. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come here to worship you, and this be in the heart of our worship. We ask you to bless this bread that we take it in a manner that's pleasing in thy sight, like your disciples did on the day tonight before you were crucified. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we ask you to bless the food of the vine, which represents thy blood that was shed for us. We ask you to bless us and keep us mindful of taking the matter pleasing in thy sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Forgive me of remains, let's turn to number 50. Number 50. Let's try number 62. Number 62. Have thine own way, have thine own way. Thou I am the clay, mold me and make me after thy will. While you heal and still, have thine own way, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Why was it just now? As in thy presence, on thee I come. Have thine own way, Lord. Have thine own way. O Lord, my need, absolute stay. Fill with my spirit, till all shall see Christ only glory, living in me.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, gracious bless this congregation and the money we're about to give be used in thy will and thy will only. We know you love a cheerful giver, so let's open our hearts and give back to you what you give to us most abundantly. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This time, please mark number 109 for our invitation sign. Number 109. And then before our sermon, we'll sing number 350. 350. Tempted and tried, often to wonder why it should be us all early on, while they are sitting about, never
understand why still my brother in the sunshine will understand all I am. When we see Jesus coming in glory, when he comes on all in the sky, then we shall meet in the brightness of we'll understand all by and by. Father, come along, no one Father, come along, understand why. Still my brother, live in the sunshine, will understand all I am love. I misunderstood this holiday for many, many years. At Veterans Day, and rightly so, I asked all of our veterans to stand. I will not do so today because this is not your holiday. This is the holiday where we remember those who have left their lives on battlefields. President Abraham Lincoln said that the tree of freedom must from time to time be nourished by the blood of patriots. I have never been in the military, but I'm coming on 30 years as a public school teacher, which has nothing to do with being in the military other than this. I have spent time with, I have corrected, laughed with young men and women. One of my former students this month graduated from West Point and is now the second lieutenant in the Army. Many are leaving now. When I had to go for a random drug test, another bus driver was there. She said, "What is your name?" She said, "Oh, you're Dr. Holloway. You'll know this guy." And she showed me a very nervous new student that I had graduating and becoming a member of the United States Marine Corps. All of these memories are not happy ones. I have seen young men and women who I've laughed with, cried with, taught, and they've taught me, who have left carrying our nation's flag into foreign fields and came back underneath it in a casket. This holiday has become a day to grill out, a day to go to the beach. I saw that Tybee couldn't hardly get there yesterday. I don't say that we should avoid those activities, but we should remember what this day was about. my job up until this year, and they've changed it, was to teach the Constitution. And one thing that I have always seen is that this nation has freedom. Unlimited freedom, no. But more freedom to make our own choices in this world than others. The very thing that we're doing right now, gathering together to worship God, to pray together, to study together, and to praise together, is not enjoyed by 2/3 of the population of this world. But it is a right that's guaranteed. It is a freedom. But I can promise you from personal experience, freedom is not free. And it never has been. Shall we pray? Almighty God, please allow us to express our gratitude to you, to your church, and for the fortunate circumstances where we find ourselves in this world, the freedoms that we enjoy, and help us to show true gratitude to those who gave their life so that you and I could have this discussion this morning in front of these people and have no fear of retribution from our enemies. In the name of Christ. Amen. The title of our lesson comes from what actually was in Exodus 12:14, a description of what was called Passover. Now this day will be a memorial to you, and you shall celebrate as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance. So the concept of remembering something that was great is a biblical one. And it is from the very first days of man's relationship with God, to remember where we were. This Memorial Day, and I'm using this as an example, but it's something I feel very strongly as well. I have just a moment ago tagged everybody that I know is on Facebook and have put these words. There are only two people that have ever offered to die for you. Jesus Christ and the American soldier. And both of them have. Tomorrow is a day, well, I'm off work for the rest of the summer. But it is a day where many people are off work. It is a day that we celebrate to remember those who fought valiantly and that laid their lives in battlefields. Unfortunately, it seems that it's only a day off of work for most people. It seems that it's just a day off of work, not for its purpose, but simply for their own personal enjoyment. In case you can't read that, the man cooking is saying, hot dogs, bratwurst, hamburgers, is there anything I forgot? Yes, you did. You forgot to remember the soldiers since 1776 that have died so that you could have freedom to set a fire in a metal bowl and cook hamburgers, hot dogs, and bratwurst. You could worship, that you could work, that you could live where you choose, that you could travel where you choose. However, today is our Memorial Day as well. Just a moment ago, not too very long ago, we celebrated a memorial. We don't do it once per year, and personally, I believe the American soldier should be celebrated more than once per year, but be that as it may, Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross is something we celebrate each and every first day of the week, and it's something that we remember in this memorial service in a formal way, but it is something that we should remember every single second of our lives.
the very thought that man could crucify the Son of God would be as ridiculous as me writing or drawing a man on a piece of paper, setting it off in the corner, and allowing that little man to kill me. But yet he put himself through it. He allowed it to happen. We sing a song, he could have called 10,000 angels. I saw a picture, I think I shared it with you on a Sunday evening. I saw a picture of Jesus' crucifixion, but in heaven surrounding him, there were myriads and uncountable angels just waiting for him to express it with a thought. And I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, you'd best be glad I wasn't on that cross. Because I'd have called him. People say that's mean, that's hateful. I ain't mean, that's hateful, that's what every one of y'all do too. But Jesus did. Jesus did. And in Luke 22 and verse 19, and he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it them, saying, "This is my body, which was given to you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in Acts 20 and verse 7, the early Christians were very, very sure to meet together on the first day of the week to bake bread, to break bread. They were very careful to remember that memorial service. And yet, just as the Monday of Memorial Day is set aside as a time to decorate graves, as a time to do anything in memory of those soldiers who have died, the first day of the week and the day that has become the time when we remember Christ's death is nothing more than just another day off of work. Both of those things are sad. Because what's actually happening is you are looking at the sacrifices made in your behalf, and you are saying, it's more important to me to do anything else. What should we remember? What should we remember? Not only on Memorial Day, but each and every day of our lives. Remember the day of your salvation. Do you? I would describe mine to you, but that's personal. I'm not sharing that. You shouldn't either. That's something between you and God. Do you remember the day that you called his name? That you accepted him in baptism? That you began to walk in newness of life? Do you remember that moment and that day? I bet you do. You remember who is there. You remember who you saw. You remember everything about that moment. God wanted the children of Israel to remember, as we read, their salvation from the hands of Egyptian bondage. When we remember, then we appreciate. In Ephesians 2, we need to remember that we were once without Christ, but because of his blood, we who were far off have been brought near to him. We need to remember, and the reason you need to remember is so you won't forget. And there's a reason why men like me, preachers, will bring that cross up to you. And in light of that sacrifice, what kind of people should we or ought we be? Should we be the kind of people that so covet an extra hours of sleep or 2 hours of sleep that we miss the chance to come together with the people of God to sing praises to him and to express that appreciation? Should we so covet television shows, our time with family, or anything else so that we can forget the sacrifice that was made? I can't come to church. How would you feel if Jesus said, I can't climb Calvary? I don't care if it's a can't or a won't or whatever it is. Whatever excuse that people use for not worshiping the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, would that have been an acceptable excuse for Jesus not to have carried that cross of Calvary? Secondly, you and I are ingrates if we do not remember what God has done for us. It was so important to Samuel that in 1 Samuel 7, Samuel erected a stone and called it Ebenezer, which simply means a stone of help. Why did he put it up? He said, for this, as they were going into, he said, and attacking their enemies and being victorious over the Philistines, he said, we're going to serve God and God only. And the reason is because of where this stone is. Thus far, God has helped us. We sing a song that remembers this. We sing a song that remembers this in our books. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come. Today, each and every one of us need to figuratively raise the stone. Samuel had a lot more guys, a lot more in his army than we do. I don't think he could raise a rock like that. But figuratively, in our lives today, raise a stone and look backwards and say the same thing. Hither by thy help I've come. It was important for Israel to realize and recognize God's hand in their lives. It's even more important for us to recognize that as well. Where are you today as opposed to where were you before? Hither by thy help I've come. Hither by God's help I have come. In Psalms 105 and verse 5, remember his marvelous works, which he has done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth. Psalms 143 and verse 5, I will remember the days of old. I will meditate on all your works. I muse on the works of your hands. Let us remember everything that God has done for us. Don't take the mentality that my students do at school. If they get an A on a paper, a test, an electronic assignment here lately, if they get an A, they always tell people, look what I got. If they fail it, they show people and say, look what he gave me. Folks, we've got some wonderful things in our lives. Every one of us do. Don't do what they did. Don't do what the news does, tell you about all the horrible, sad things. I like the news, the national news, but I like the last story. You know what it is? Good news. Great news. Today, one of my favorite actors, because he acted in Star Trek, Patrick Stewart. He loves acting. In his 70s, he's Sir Patrick Stewart now. He lives in Los Angeles, but the Queen knighted him. You know what he's been doing lately for nothing? I mean, he made himself even more beloved by me. Not only was he Captain Picard, but he is reading sonnets by William Shakespeare every night for people. If you don't appreciate that, there's something wrong with you. Shakespeare was a genius. His sonnets are beautiful and beautifully written. Oh, I never liked Shakespeare because you had the wrong teacher, folks. Shakespeare was an absolute genius. He was kind of a marginal human being, but he was a genius when he was writing. I know that because we've imitated him. Let's remember everything. I love the good things that they say at the end of the nightly news, don't you? little girl who is raising money to buy frontline workers masks and personal protection equipment. The old guy that's over 100 is raising money for Britain's National Health Service by walking around his garden, has raised millions of dollars and saved people's lives. I love hearing that stuff. And you know something? There is something to be said about that. When you look back at your life, there's a heck of a lot more good than there is bad. You've got a whole lot more stuff than you don't have. You've got a whole lot more stuff to make you happy than the things that make you sad. Let's remember all of God's blessings and answered prayers. He who glories, let him glory in the Lord. Thirdly, remember the forefathers of the faith. Bulletin article that nobody reads was about the mother on Mother's Day of St. Augustine. Augustine was a man I very much admired. He didn't always have a good start, but he had a faithful mother who was with him until he came back to Christ and became one of the true and great theologians of his day and ours. Exodus 32:13, Moses told the children of Israel to remember those such as Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. You see, they were to remember the promises that had come to them and the responsibility they had to continue in the Lord. You and I have the opportunity and the ability, but most importantly, the charge to remember those who are much older and wiser and who have lived and experienced this life and learn from them. That is in part why we have the Old Testament. Here's something I do not mind saying. There are three men who inspired me to preach the gospel. Two of which are living, one has passed on. One was Gentry Stoltz. He was a preacher in Daytona when I was growing up. Another is John Gibson, who I got into an email battle with a couple days ago. And the other is Tom's father, Tom Eccleston, who has been on the front line of the cause of the gospel for longer than I'm alive, and still is, in southern Nigeria. He's the guy that didn't always have pulpits. I can remember as a little kid, we would raise money in our Sunday school classes so that he could have a motorcycle to go to all these churches on Sunday. Sometimes the pulpit was the seat of that motorcycle. They'd read under a tree. And he, I don't know how many there were, I lost count. He wore motorcycles out. He was always needing another one or parts for the one he had. Another man is actually, I think, with us today. Is Tom Jr. Most people don't know that our missionary that we support in Nigeria has a degree in chemistry, where he could have made quite a bit of money. He said at one time, he told me his father took him aside and said, whatever job you do, you better understand that your first job is a preacher of the gospel. And that first job led Tom to teach, and now he's president of the School of Biblical Studies in Jos, Nigeria, which is surrounded by Muslim extremists. Yeah. When people say I begrudge that dollar I send to Nigeria, I just try to say, what if you had to live there? I have met preachers and others, but in this case, preachers, of whom the world hold this one right there. Abasiama sent a young man to become a minister of the gospel. And while he was in school, at the School of Biblical Studies in Jos, he was killed. And Abasiama said, we will not stop sending our men to become preachers of the gospel. Lastly, remember God's will for your life. In Numbers 15 and verse 40, and that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy for your God. Why? If we back up one verse, in verse 39, it shall be a tassel for you to look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, so as to do them, and not follow after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you played the harlot. Why do you remember? So you won't mess up. Why do you remember all of these things? So you won't mess up. It's a lot easier if you remember to live this Christian life. God knows that we're inclined to forget. But he also knows that we're inclined to follow our own desires and heart. Christ wants us to remember his words. Therefore, we will and may live by them. You're supposed to see a whole lot more than that. But above all, and above all these things that I've talked about, we should remember the one who was willing to sacrifice his life and die for us. When man asked Christ, how much do you love me? Jesus stretched out his hands and died. Because he loves you that much. He loves you that much. It's too restrictive. Sin is more restrictive. Living a life of sin is much more restrictive. Living for your own desires is much more restrictive. Living a life where Jesus is your King is ultimate freedom. I know that's not what everybody says, but it's the truth. Today, we remember Jesus Christ. Tomorrow, we remember Jesus Christ and those who have died for us so that we can have the freedom to remember Christ unmolested by our government. Keep these memories. Keep understanding. Know that we are only here because of God's help. If for any reason you stand in need, respond to the Lord's invitation, will you come? Together we stand, and as we stand.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. Lord, run go with me, I still will follow. Lord, run go with me, I still will follow. Lord, run go with me, I still will follow. No turning back. No turning back.
Let's pray, please. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for a beautiful service. May it be in every one of us, man, to love our God like He loves us. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to be with her kin, its lost loved ones in the past service. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to be with their family tomorrow. Be with them where they can relax and return their love by worship. We ask you, Heavenly Father, forgive us where we've wronged anybody. Again, Heavenly Father, we thank you for many blessings and the privilege we have to be in your house and sing songs of praise to you. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated for just a moment. Wade, your birthday is Saturday, isn't it?
Right.
How old you gonna be?
59.
Oh, you're older than me. That's perfect age. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Wade. Happy birthday to you. This coming Saturday, we've scheduled a work day at 8. I've got several things for everybody to do. I'm not sure if we'll get finished with it all, but the more people that are here, the closer we'll get to being finished with it all. So try to show up at 8 o'clock Saturday, and we'll get those things done around the building that need to be done. Let's see, any other announcements? I have not heard from the Longinos. I've written them a couple of times, but I've not heard back. Has anybody heard from Lynn and Vicky? Clarice, have you heard from them?
Oh,
Have you heard from Lynn and Vicky?
I'm sorry.
Lynn and Vicky Longino. Have you heard from them?
Oh, no, I haven't heard from her. I did call her on the text yesterday, and I got distracted and didn't do it.
I've written them a couple of letters. I don't know if the ones I'm sending to Emory are getting through, but I hope that.
I'll get out and get skinny on it for you.
Okay. And if there's something, I'll make a call.
Okay.
Everybody should be getting the calls. Now I've looked and they seem to be going through. So also those of you who are emailed the bulletin, I'm sick of eye contact. So I've changed it to just Google email, Google Maps is what it's called. GMaps is what it's called. It works a lot better. And instead of having to go to a link, we have it's attached to the email. So, and if you want to see the bulletin in color, that's the only way you can do it right now because the copy machine's down. It's a long story, but I don't come off very good in, so I'm not going to tell you the whole thing. But I wound up making a big yellow mess back there one day and called the guy, and it was a different guy than usually comes. The guy usually comes. The guy used to come here, Mike Leggett, and he's great. No matter what foolish thing I do, but this guy was another Mike, and he wasn't too happy with me. But I mean, we've got other toner coming, other yellow toner coming, and it will work hopefully. And it hasn't got here yet, so the bulletins are black and white. They're in color online, so if you want to go there. I'm not having any trouble with YouTube over in the house, but they seem to be having trouble with it in other places. So I don't know what's going on today. Tom is with us by Zoom, but I don't know if he can talk. I even saw him for a while during the sermon. I guess he can't. Tom, if you can talk or speak or you're still there, say something. Anytime. Anything else we talk about?
One of our shows died.
Who?
One of the shows died, 25 years old. That was in North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I don't know his name.
Well, it seems like that's something that happens every day. Our world seems to be a very dangerous place. And, you know, I don't know why people
mind so much. I really don't. We seem to be one of the nicest people there is in the world right now, but they seem to hate us. I mean, people have come up with things and answers. I'm not going to entertain any one of them because I simply don't know. But for some reason, they seem to put targets on American soldiers, and I hate that. Now, I can't say it'd be even worse if it happened here as it did back in the 60s, but it does not happen here. I'm sure there are a few. I know of one group in Oklahoma that tickets soldiers' funerals and stuff, but they seem to have died out because there's a lot of non-violent protests against them, and then a few violent ones I found. And I won't mention their name because I'm not going to advertise them. Anyhow, but this nation seems to be a very patriotic one right now, for the most part. And we seem to appreciate the contribution that our soldiers are making. Tomorrow, I wouldn't recommend going to the beach because Tybee is packed. There was lines all the way to the Wendy's on Highway 80 on the way to Tybee yesterday. That's too much. Go to the beach next weekend, it'll be empty. Hilton Head, the beaches there are open, but I think you have to wear a mask when you can't go in the water. So it's going to be in the 90s and not go, and go to the beach where it's really, really hot and not go in the water. I wouldn't recommend it. But you know, that's just not a beach day for me. It's down swelter on the sand. But go when it's better. If you grill out tomorrow, we kind of tentatively have plans to grill out tomorrow. The problem is I'm going to have to go to the grocery store tonight after church or tomorrow and find out what meat there is in grocery stores. It's never the same. It's never ever the same what they have. So I don't know if they can have whatever we grow there. Ground beef. It may be cereal. Ground beef is hard to find around here. And they limit you to one. And in fact, I was going to say this while Donna was here, but I'm not. She went to, and I won't tell you which grocery store it was, that they have, and Walmart has had, you can only go certain ways down the aisles.
Oh, yeah, Publix does that.
And she had on her list, there's a couple of cans of soup to make a casserole, 2 cans of nacho cheese soup, and 2 cans of cream of mushroom. Well, there was a lady stocking shelves there, and Donna was going the wrong way on the aisle because she didn't think about it. And she was getting 2 cans, and there's a limit of 1. You can only have 1 can of soup at this place. It was limited, it's rational. The lady saw fit to reprimand my wife for this. That was a bad mistake. Y'all all know Donna is sweetness and light, nice and sweet to everybody. First of all, you're not a doctor. She's not nice to them. And a nurse who doesn't want to take care of her, she isn't nice to them. Or somebody that's going to publicly reprimand her for keeping a social distance by traveling in the little lanes while right in her face without a mask on, telling her off. She came home still mad, and I didn't mess with her. She was furious. She said, "I am never going to," and she mentioned the store again. You know, so I'm not doing any false advertisement against those people, but you know, it's pretty serious. Donna don't put up with that much. She just like being reprimanded. I don't think I do either. Especially when I don't consider it doing anything all that wrong, go the wrong way. And if you want 2 cans of soup, I think you ought to have in this country.
Because you're being trained. You're being trained.
By who?
By the workmen.
By the stockers?
No.
The grocery store? I don't do reprimand too well. And I don't like it when people try to teach me a lesson. If you want me to do something, just tell me. Don't try to teach me a lesson. That's not going to happen. I'm 56 years old. Okay? I mean, if you want to tell me something I don't know, tell it to me. Don't
lie to me and put me in a situation where I've got to figure something out myself, folks, I'll listen to what you have to say. I may reject it completely, you know, but I'll listen to what you have to say. But you don't do that.
I think Heather and Dawn have the same mindset. She would go on her too. I told her to back up and shut up.
Well, you know, my thing is, before we go any farther, you need to check yourself. I'm not going to put up with this, I can promise you. And I'll say it calmly and nicely. You don't want to know what's going to happen if you keep this up. And that's what happened with Dawn. She was nice about it, but she was good about it. She kind of walked back away from the lady, but, you know, I would have probably said, I'm not having this discussion with you. I will be happy to discuss this with your manager and tell him how you're treating me. That's it. But that wouldn't be good either, because I don't want to take away somebody's job. Especially when she was probably told to do it as a manager. But let's just say when you give some people a little bit of authority, kind of go nuts.
Amen.
Give them an inch and take a mile.
Yeah, a lady at a home improvement store was talking to the cashier. I was next in line. We had to get home as fast as it was here. We were all three gone. And I got in line and my feet were on the mark. This lady looked at me and said, "You need to wait back there." I said, "No, ma'am. I need to be waiting where you're at because your transaction is finished. You're sitting there talking about silly things. You need to walk on out so that other people can do business with the store." Well, I said, "Nobody cares what you think. That's not important. It's not important to me. It's not important to the store. I have a purchase to make. You're standing there talking and have finished your purchase. You need to go home." "Well, this is a lady from my church." I said, "Great. I'm glad you go to church. Talk to her there." She walked out. Gave me a dirty look. I didn't feel bad. I mean, I really legitimately was in a hurry, but was not going to push anybody out of the way, you know. Was going to wait my turn. And I think my needs were probably, I don't know this for a fact, more important than hers, you know. But it doesn't really matter. She was done. Her needs were over.
It's hard to be in a hurry these days. And so
It really is.
takes forever.
And Savannah is kind of, and this is one thing I like about Savannah. Savannah's kind of like that. Nobody's in a hurry. Deadlines don't really mean anything. The time when something begins is kind of a suggestion. Our principal is from Alabama, where when something begins at 8 o'clock, it begins at 8 o'clock, and all of her employees are from here. And this began at 8 o'clock. It's only 8:10. What are you upset about? 10 minutes, you know? We were supposed to start at 8. Yeah, you know. I tried to tell her this, and I said, "This is Savannah. You're not going to, you know." All right, I've been on soapbox. Do you have anything else to say? Remember, the work day next Saturday at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
It's too early.
It's not too early. You get up early and have to go to school. See y'all tonight at 5.
Joe? Yes, sir. You may not like this, but I think you got a redneck one. Get your cut. Don't feel you good now. You got it? Okay.
I know she will.
Yeah.